Good evening to all, ladies and gentlemen. We're very happy to have you with us in our second PsyMood session. Before we begin, I would like you to be aware that this session is being recorded and it will be available in our Facebook page and our YouTube channel. In case you feel more comfortable, please turn off your camera. We would like to ask you to please keep your microphones off during the event in order to not disturb the speakers. If you have any questions or would like to comment on anything during the session, please use the chat. In the end of the event, we will have a question and answer session in which the microphones will be on and anyone can participate. So, today we will be talking about supporting your child's mental health during this pandemic. As countries have been constantly changing measures to reduce the number of people infected with COVID-19, more and more of us find ourselves having to make big changes in our daily routine. We're all faced with new realities, which include working from home, being temporarily unemployed, dealing with homeschooling of children, lack of restricted physical contact, and with other family members, friends, and colleagues. Adapting to this changing lifestyle, managing the fears of contracting the virus, worrying about future uncertainty, and about people close to us who are particularly vulnerable are challenging to all of us, adults, teenagers, children. During this time, it's certainly important to keep a special eye on our children. So, to help us talk about such important matter, we have invited two amazing professionals. I'm sure you will love them, Khalilah Brooks and Nadia Prando. Khalilah Brooks has over 25 years in the entertainment industry. Her education work experience led her to be a child and youth worker for over 8 years and an entrepreneur for 10 years. Now, being a published author and the creator of Auntie B and Friends, she contributes to the community of the performing arts and enjoys every moment of it. BAM provides the services of musical theater, storytelling for children from 2 to 12 using life-size puppets. Through this platform, children are encouraged to love themselves and one another. In the last 4 years, she's been the recipient of Centennial College Dean's Award Entrepreneurship and Innovation 2019, MJKO Inspirational Award 2017, Black Women Role Model of the Year Award from James Maloney in 2016, Play for Keeps Leadership Award 2015, and Canadian Small Business Award 2015. And we also have Nadia with us. Nadia is a family therapist. Nadia, could you tell us a little about yourself, please? Because the information I had here disappeared. Sorry.
No problem at all. Hi, everybody. So I'm Nadia. I'm a family therapist. I see children, family. I also do a lot of groups with women, women that are pregnant. I like to follow from the pregnancy until the child has 3 to 4 years in order to prevent that children get any fixed diagnosis or for them just to have a natural and healthy development. I have 10 years of experience doing groups and being just a clinic psychologist. And I'm here with you guys today.
Thank you, Nadia, and I'm sorry about this.
Oh.
But I'm very happy to have you on board. We, PsyMood, are very happy to have both of you and Khalilah on board. And as I mentioned in the beginning, this is a very special time we're facing, right? Our routines have been altered as individuals, as family. So I think the first topic I would like to talk about with both of you is how have been families reacting differently to the situation, and what do you two feel has been challenging for them?
Mm-hmm.
So Nadia, maybe you could start.
Yeah, sure. So for each family, it has been different, right? Some people have been working from home. Some people continue to go out and do their job. So depending on the family, if they have children or not, the age of their children, each one has been affected differently, right? We see that now that the isolation is starting to decrease and we are opening more things, we are able to leave the house. I think now is the moment where people are really noticing how sick they are right now, how their mental health is not well. Because in the beginning, it was hard. Everybody was frustrated. Everybody was scared about the COVID. It was a very difficult time, but with around 2 to 3 weeks, we were able to adapt, right? Adapt as well as we can, right? It's not easy to work from home, have kids running around, not being able to take care of the kids while having to work. So of course, the stress levels and anxiety levels are way up. But for example, I have clients where they got more anxious because one of the parents would still go out to work. So that was making them even more anxious because they were afraid that this person that was leaving the house to work would be, at some point, would get COVID and would infect all the family. So that brought a lot of anxiety to most families. And other families that both parents are working from home, they're also very anxious because they don't know what to do with the kids. What do I do? I have to work. And so most of the time the kids are spending on electronics, watching TV, on their cell phones or playing games. Most of teenagers are, yes, very addicted to playing their games. So families that I see that have teenagers, most of the complaints is my kid doesn't want to leave the bedroom. He's just playing all the time and I'm worried of what is going to happen. How is that going to affect them afterwards? Am I going to be able to take my kid out of his room and go out again, be able to play with the kids, with their friends, right? So a lot of anxiety and a lot of stress. So it is expected that everybody is in a higher range of stress, anxiety, and frustration. So more outbursts are going to happen. Probably they're having more arguments in the house. Everybody's stressed, everybody's scared. And we are also suffering from, we have to spend a lot of energy thinking about what's going to happen next, how life is going to turn out. So there's a lot of energy that we spend trying to figure it out how life is going to be after this. So that makes us also very exhausted all the time. There are a lot of factors that are interfering us.
Khalilah, do you feel the same way as Nadia in your practice?
Yeah, I do. I really feel that children specifically, especially when you're really under the age of 3, you're at that age of exploring life. So, you go from being outside and, just imagine taking your child to the grocery store. It's touch, 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 or, and now it's like you can't explore. And that's really hindering the development and the emotional connection and the physical connection for children as they learn, right? And so for parents, it's really all about weaning that now in, because we have to protect our children and teaching them constantly about washing their hands and of course, wearing masks. And some parents are restricting themselves from exploring the world now, especially because we're in this fearful space of COVID and, we don't really know what's going to happen. So definitely now we have to think about how are we going to adapt to this new environment after we've had our children and we're promoting exploring. They always, imagine those little toddlers, they're always putting things in their mouths. Always. That's how they explore. So we have to think about now, how do we retrain all the habits that we all know? Because all of us know those habits. We've been children once. So how do we now retrain ourselves and, protect our children through COVID, for sure. And yes.
And how can we do that?
I think it's really all about communication, and especially when you're dealing with younger children, I think it's about fun communication as well. As you know, I come from the theater background and media background for children. So I would think of really cool and fun ways to engage and interact with our children. I remember the song Head and Shoulders, Knees and Toes. So, and then also the song, we actually just did a song about stomp your feet. So if you're happy and you know it, stomp your feet. So maybe if you're happy and you know it, wash your hands. If you're happy and you know it, wear a mask. you know? So now we have to think about even how we're engaging in music with our children to kind of create that excitement about change, right? It has to be an entertaining component because children, before they're even talking, they're dancing. You put a little bit of music on and they're using those motor skills to get their little legs going, right? So I think it's about being creative at this point to find ways to continue to protect our children, most importantly, that's the most important thing, but also to teach them how can we revert from the past to the future. And I think being creative would probably help some of our parents to explore and become a child themselves. Now you've got to become that youthful parent, you know, and create some fun ways to engage with your children as you're laying down the new rules and the new laws and with COVID.
On that matter, Khalilah, we as parents, in order for us to be creative, we have also to take care of ourselves first, right? We have to be in good mental health to be able to take care of our kids. So what kind of things you and Nadia would say that we as parents have to be aware in order not to increase the anxiety on our children?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that it's important to recognize when you're starting to feel a little overwhelmed. And I think it's important to be okay with having those emotions, most importantly. So we can recognize the emotion, we can be okay with the emotion. Now let's create the solution. So maybe it's that counting backwards, 3, 2, 1. You know, just to take that moment to breathe and be able to communicate whatever it is that you're working through, right? We have a practice called that we've just mostly introduced to our audience not too long, a couple of weeks back, called whole body listening. And so with whole body listening, it gives you that opportunity to sit up straight, hands on your lap, listening ears, eyes directly looking at the person you're communicating with, feet flat on the ground, and having that moment to be able to articulate, you know, how you're feeling, and then listen to your other partner, maybe it's your child or your husband or your wife, your companion, to have that moment to listen, because families are, you know, living in close quarters. And on the average, you've got people working and they're not, you know, necessarily spending, you know, 24 hours a day with one another, right? So whole body listening is a great practice for not only just the parents, but specifically for the children as well, because they don't know how to express their feelings. You know, they have those moments of what we would classify as temper tantrums, right? But really there's something bigger there. It's not just a moment of frustration. It's, okay, I see my baby needs me a little bit more. Take that moment to have that whole body listening practice and introduce that to your child. And you can do that through songs, you know, head and shoulders, knees and toes. You can use that song to kind of create that whole body listening moment. And really, I think it's important just to express yourself. Use your voice and express yourself under all circumstances, and hopefully it can be in a place of respect, so we're not yelling all the time, and, you know, our children aren't witnessing that, because we know that that creates inner turmoil for our children as well, right? So I think whole body listening would be a great practice for families at this point in time.
Nadia, what about the couples? How are couples dealing with this COVID? Because now couples, they tend to be more together, and we have listened that there has been increased number of fights at home, right? And this affects our children.
Yeah, of course. It's something new. We're not used to be around each other that much time. Of course, we're gonna have more arguments. But I think it's even because we are on a crisis, so frustration, anxiety, and stress, that's gonna make us with a heavy, clouded mind, and we're not gonna be able to talk clearly. We're just gonna explode our emotions. So as Khalilah was saying, it's so important for us to be able to first recognize what we're feeling, give it a name, and then say, okay, this is what's happening. So then I can prepare myself and think about how am I going to deal with that, and how am I not going to let this emotion just explode on my husband, on my partners. So it's so important to have this self-awareness for you to be able to control yourself better and not let yourself explode. But it is expected for every family to be living with high stress and having more arguments just because of a crisis situation. So don't be alarmed that you are in that position right now. But of course, there are things that we can do. So first, if you are able to just take yourself out of the scene, take a breath, relax, try to figure it out why you're stressed. What is making you so overwhelmed? Is it because you're working all the time and you're worried about the kids? Or is it because you're not finding a time on your schedule to take care of yourself? And that is something that parents tend to forget. They tend to forget to leave a space on the agenda for themselves. So what makes them relax? What makes them relieve the stress? Is it having time to take a long bubble bath? Is it having time to just walk, run, ride their bicycle, or read a book? It's so important for them to add that into their routine to release the stress. So when they are there with their kids, they're gonna be refreshed, they're gonna be energized, and they're not gonna just throw the stress over their kids or over their partners, right? So it is something that we have to keep in mind. And I was just like to comment about what Khalilah was saying about the importance of being creative when we talk to our kids about COVID. I think that is so important because kids tend to see by our facial expression or our body movements that something is going on. Mommy is not as she used to be. There's something and I don't know what it is. So first being able to tell our kids that, yes, I'm also worried about COVID. I'm also anxious about that. But even more when we are trying to speak to them and explain to them about COVID, if we do in a creative way, in a fun way, that is gonna take all the anxiety away. So mom is talking to me about something that is seriously, but it's fun. We're singing and we're having fun, so maybe I shouldn't be so worried about that. Because now I see that a lot of the kids are taking the anxiety and the fear from their parents. So they are getting scared of going out, seeing their friends because mom is so scared or dad is so scared about COVID and he doesn't want to leave the house. So why should I? Right? I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to copy my parents' emotions. If they're scared, I'm going to be scared too. If they're anxious, I'm going to be anxious because they know it all. So I'm just going to follow through. So it is so important for us to realize what we are feeling. And when we're talking with the kids, tend to pass a message that, yes, I'm worried, I'm anxious, but there are things we can do. We're going to wash our hands. We're going to social distance. We're going to wear our mask, and that's fine. And it's okay. We don't need to worry too much.
Yeah, and to spiral off from what you said, Nadia, I would, in regards to the taking self time for yourself, I think let's create a schedule, a schedule, a family schedule, and let's be fun. So maybe we can have an image on our calendar or our daily time chart that has, you know, maybe a puppy. It's time at 8 o'clock, we take the puppy for a walk. And I'm throwing just this out. I don't know what everyone's home is, but 8 o'clock, we take a puppy for a walk. We got bubbles, maybe an image of bubbles. Maybe we go cut out a craft and make bubbles and put that up at 8 p.m. It's tub time. We also have to make sure mom and dad have in their schedule, oh, it's daddy's time. Maybe we have image of mom, maybe we have image of dad or what have you. It's mommy and daddy's time now. Have some alarms that chime differently. So when the children hear, you know, on the 8 o'clock in the morning dog walk, it's a different alarm than the 8 p.m. in the evening for tub time. So they know, oh, that's the alarm for tub time. That's the alarm for mommy to have her own time. We can't bother mommy right now. Mommy's alarm's on. It's her time to have a moment. So maybe we kind of get into some creative things like that where the family's working collectively together to hone in on the solution of how the operations of their new home will be like.
Yeah.
I think it's very important what you just mentioned, Khalilah, because routine grounds us, right? It not only during pandemic, but any time of our life, even normal times, we know that routines are very important And I think it helps us as family organize our schedule, organize our life so we're not so lost in this, and it reduces our anxiety, it reduces our children's anxiety as well. And I was listening to Nadia about communicating with our children. And you were saying, yes, it's important to talk about the pandemic, right? Khalilah said, let's talk about it creatively. But I was here thinking about those moments in which our children might really notice, yes, we're anxious. Yes, we're crying. Yes, we're worried about someone who probably has COVID. So how can we talk about this with our children? How can we communicate effectively with our children about these issues related to the pandemic?
I think you just need to be true. You need to be able to look at your kids and say, yeah, mom is sad because someone got COVID, or mom is worried. Because we tend to try to fake it, or, oh, I'm not going to show my kids what I'm going through. I don't want them to realize how anxious I am or whatever. And that tends to cause damage other than protection, because, as I said, the kids can sense through our facial expression, body movements, or even the way we're walking. They say, something is wrong. And kids tend to have the idea that something is wrong, and maybe it's something that I did. So they tend to take the guilt for themselves. Maybe mommy is sad because I threw my toy away, or because I was drinking juice and my glass fell on the floor, whatever. So the kids are going to take the guilt for themselves. It's something that I did that make mommy be this way or daddy be that way. So it is so important for us to be able to tell and explain to our kids that it's nothing that you did, sweetie. Mommy is anxious about COVID. Mommy's worried about her job. I don't know if I'm going to keep the job or not. Mommy's worried about other things. If you don't want, and if you don't feel comfortable, you don't need to be so specific, but you need to tell them that you're worried about other things. It's nothing with them. It's nothing that they did. You're just worried about grown-up things, about other worries. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree, Nadia. I think honesty is your best policy. And again, you don't have to get graphic with it and give all the extra details that you would when you're talking to an adult, of course, but definitely be transparent with your children. They know anyways, you're not kidding a little stink. You may think you're kidding them, but you're not. So, honesty is the best policy. Just let them know how you're feeling, and also allow them to say that, and it's okay. It's okay that mommy and daddy are having these feelings. And say, do you remember when you had that feeling? Be relatable, right? We can learn through each other by relating to one another, right? So be relatable.
Yeah, definitely.
And so how can we empower them to deal with this situation themselves, to deal with their feelings?
Great question. I think self-empowerment is something that I just thrive on when it comes to children, and empowering them, first of all, and reassuring them that they're not alone. They're not the only ones. Everyone else is dealing with them. But give them the praises in those moments where they're complying and doing some of the new rules you just set out. Make sure that you say, oh, look at you, you washed your hands, high five. Give them the hugs that when they're least expecting it, give them those hugs. Like, I have a 3-year-old niece, and on Tuesday she hangs out with me. And whenever she does something really awesome, which is quite frequently because she's just a ball full of joy, sometimes I say, it means I need a little something. And she thinks I'm going to do, oh, I need a little something, means. She goes, what, Auntie? What you need? And so I go, I just need some love. So I take all the love, and sometimes I hug her so long. She's like, Auntie, did you get enough? And I'm like, no, I need more. I need more love because you've been such a good little girl today. I just need more love. So make sure we're giving our children those positive praises. And even if they make those mistakes, it's okay. Nobody is perfect. Mommy and daddy are not perfect, because don't forget, children think we are. right? They think mommy and daddy know everything. So it's okay to say, listen, if you make a mistake, it's okay. We're not perfect. If you forgot to wash your hands, it's okay. Mommy forgets sometimes too. Let's go wash it together and have fun. You know, let's sing happy birthday song 2 times as we're washing our hands, you know? So I think it's important. Positive praise is important. Letting them know that they're doing a good job, especially when you're being creative in the space of taking that time to do arts and crafts, to communicate as well, right? Because we can utilize, if children are having issues expressing themselves, we can utilize puppets or arts and crafts or drawings in order for them to express themselves, right? They then become naturally that little character that they're scribbling on the paper, right? And you can also communicate with your child through art in that way. So positive reinforcement, yeah.
Certainly. It's very helpful always. And as you were saying about love, that song of Beatles came to my mind. All we need is love in the world, right? All we need is love.
I'm in it already.
Yeah. Yeah, but I mean, it's very important to empower our kids, be honest, pay attention to them, you know, be creative, try to support them. But my question is always, okay, we're trying our best. We as parents, we all try our best, right? Our best. But I think that there might be some particular things we have to pay attention to our children as well. We have to know, okay, I think sometimes as a parent myself, right? I'm a mom of 2 adolescents now, but they have been there. And I remember I used to worry about them, you know, and my question was always, okay, when should I take them to the doctor, or when should I not take them to the doctor? And I remember the pediatrician telling me, okay, they might have a high fever, but if they're playing, if they're smiling, if their behavior has not changed, they're fine. Do not worry about the fever, right? So my question to both of you is, what particular attention, what kind of behavior should we pay attention to in our children to know if they're well, if they're not well? Is it time to look for therapists? What are the signs, basically?
So basically, when we see a lot of change on their behavior, that's going to be the easiest way for us to notice. Because of COVID, it is expected that young kids have a regression on their development. For example, kids that just started using the potty, they might wet their pants, or they might not be able to hold during the night, or kids that were already learning to walk, they maybe go back to crawling. So it is something expected, because a crisis, they notice the tension, the anxiety, and the stress, so they just regress a little bit. But this regression should maybe take 1 to 2 weeks. After that, it should go all back to normal. So if your kid had a regression in development and is still struggling to go back to where they were, it's being like a month, 2 months, that you should probably check with a professional to see what's going on, because it's taking too long for them to go back to their natural development. Everything that is very abruptly, so if they stop eating or they are eating too much, that can also be a sign. Sleep deprivation or sleeping too much, that you can see in younger kids or even in teenagers, it's also a sign that something is going on. They're all signs that something is going on, and we just need to figure it out what it is. It can be just a stress, or, oh, I'm worried about an assignment that I have to do, or it can be something bigger, something more problematic that you need to go over and take a look. But it's important for us to always keep our eyes on the children. So try to observe them the most that you can. Just observe how they're playing, what they enjoy doing, how they interact to other people, just to get an idea of who your child is. What are their likes, their dislikes, because that's going to make it easier for you to notice when something changes, right? Because if we don't spend a lot of time observing or spending time with our kids is going to make it harder for us to notice when something is off and something changed. So it's important for us to always be checking. So for teenagers now, because of COVID, we can notice a lot of aggression. They're probably more aggressive. They are more isolated. And those are, they make sense because of COVID, but if it's been a month, 2 months that they're not getting out of their room and all they're doing is play games and they don't want to leave the house, they don't want to talk with their friends, you should be alarmed, because that can also be a sign of depression. And the best way is to try talking to them. Hey, I notice you're not well, you're not doing the things that you used to do. What's going on? Let's talk. If they're not open to talk, then you can put the subject, so do you want us to find a professional that you could talk to, right? Or even trying to make them more active. So it's not healthy for you to be in your bedroom the entire day. So now you're gonna have a routine where you have to get out of the bedroom and you have to do different things, because we need to activate you. You're too isolated, you're too depressed, you're not doing anything. So we need to help you activate yourself. So help them create a routine where they can do more things.
Yeah, I agree, Nadia. And sometimes when it comes to teenagers, when you start to defining and say, hey, you're depressed, you got to get out your room. Sometimes they actually become even more rebellious because they're like, I'm not depressed. So it's one of those things where what we want to do is also, to add on to what Nadia suggested, is take an interest at what they do like. Take an interest, spin the wheel around a different way. So as an example, Sunday nights, maybe, you had a hair routine. So my daughter, every Sunday night, we used to watch Disney. She's grown now, she's 23. But every Sunday we used to kind of watch Disney movies, and we would sit and I would braid her hair. And while I'm braiding her hair, we would have conversation while watching the Disney movie, getting out and get popcorn. So I would take an interest in, because she loved Disney, take an interest in that and have that quality time. Maybe your daughter, or, I'm just throwing these little ideas of lights, aesthetics. Take some time and scroll through, maybe they're on Instagram, scroll through their Instagram pages and say, oh, you like that aesthetic? I like those eyebrows, or I like those nails. Maybe your son is into video games. Have that, or daughter, have those conversations. Tell me a little more about that game. And that way you're kind of going into their world, right? Instead of them coming out into our adult world. Sometimes we want to go into their world, and that becomes relatable. And then you've got a whole spew of conversation happening that didn't exist before. Also with video games, maybe you want to think about, hey, if this is something that they really are always doing, can we get into some coding? Maybe we can tap into some of that. Let's do some online coding with them. And again, get engaged with the program that they might like online. Right now, we're all doing webinars. We're all on Zoom right now. Everything is remote. So be a part of that remote learning process with your child, your adolescent, or your teenager. That might be a good way to get into that conversation. And then you become closer, right? There's that extra bond starts to happen when you take an interest in your child's extracurricular activities, or, things that they enjoy doing, right? That might be. Mm-hmm.
Khalilah, as a mom of teenagers, I can give you my testimony on this, because that's something that has been happening. I suddenly caught myself now about TikTok, about all the Instagram accounts, different accounts they have. How can you change the pictures? How can you improve all the apps they use to improve pictures? I watched the whole Dr. House and got addicted. Dr. House or Green's Dr. Whatever. Now I don't remember, but I did find, as a mom, this is a very good opportunity to get closer to my girls and to know better about their world. And we sit and we talk, and it's a moment we have together. Yeah. So I really agree with you. And that was something I was thinking. We've been talking about COVID, like how to support our kids, how to empower them, how to talk about our feelings, right? But this is a fantastic time we have also to improve, to strengthen the bonds with our kids, right? And to know about their world, and also to learn more about, and even pass values. I think sometimes we do not have time to talk about ourselves, to talk about our family, to pass our values to our kids, to our adolescents. I don't know. What do you have to say about this?
Yeah, you're right. Go ahead. I'll let Nadia.
Yeah, I'm glad you talked about this, because some families have also experienced the opposite. Like, they are enjoying being inside their homes with their kids. Some are very surprised. Most fathers that usually work and are more further away from their kids, because naturally the moms tend to be closer to the kids. But a lot of parents are telling me, I'm so amazed to be home and be able to see my kids growing up, what they're doing, what they enjoy, what makes them laugh, what makes them cry. They're really enjoying the opportunity to connect and get closer to their kids. It's so important. And I think it's also important for us to notice how much it makes us more happy, more fulfilled, and more satisfied when we are seeing our kids growing up, what they're doing. It's not just a piece of our life, but it's almost the whole part of our life. It is so important. The kids are, of course, enjoying that too. Oh, I know now my dad takes breaks and we can have lunch together and we can play a little bit more. They're ecstatic about it, right? And I think it's also a time for us to learn how to make more pauses in our lives. We don't need to be active and producing all the time. We need to have time to take a pause, to make a longer lunch time, to be able to socialize, to be able to talk with our kids, to take more breaks for our mental health and, of course, our physical health too. So I think there are also positive things that we can learn through all this experience that we're having.
Yeah, I agree. Sorry, Marina.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
I agree with you, Nadia, 110%. This is a moment for bonding with our children. I also want to bring some attention to some of those children that don't have those privileges, because let's not forget, they are there. There are approximately almost 80,000 children under the age of 5 years old currently living in foster care within just Canada. In the United States of America, there are over 738,000 children living in foster care. And some of those children don't get the privilege of having bonding time. They don't get the privilege of positive praise. They don't get the privilege of letting someone hear their voice. So those children need us as well. And as parents and foster parents that may be able to, or adoptive parents, whatever, make sure you're paying attention to those babies. Their signs may not be as loud and as vocal. They may not have a temper tantrum because of trauma, they've learned how to hide it to protect themselves. So let's be mindful. Those will go back quickly, if I can revert back to Nadia by saying, if you see children maybe wetting the bed out of nowhere, they haven't, pay attention, because that means that there's possibly some really strong internal emotions happening with those children that have already been through some trauma. If they're writing on the walls, there's teenagers now, if we can just get a little dark, I got to turn it to the dark side just a tad bit, but there are some teenagers that deal with their emotions by, harming themselves, right? Let's pay attention to those children. Let's pay attention to the children that aren't expressing themselves. They look great on the outside, but in the inside, they're not. And so that's where we go back, Nadia, to the one-on-one moments, and Marina, having that quality time, getting into their world so that we can open up whatever's hidden, right? Because there's that huge group of children that are hiding their emotions. Pay attention to what your children have, those conversations, You know, ask them, how are you doing? If they're dating, because some teenagers are dating, right?
Yes.
How's the relationship going with so-and-so, right? You know, get into those conversations, and don't be afraid, mom and dad, to have those conversations with the teenagers, because it's a different level of a conversation now, right? And teenagers aren't looking for dictatorship. They're looking to be groomed as an adult. So you have to hit them up in conversation as an adult. I realized my daughter's 23 now. And as I was growing with her as a parent, because that's what was happening with me, I was growing, I realized that there were different stages of parenting and that I had to elevate to each stage. Now, when she wanted to be independent and she got her license, we'll talk about this, I was, okay? I was scared, right? But I realized after she started to get her license, I had to wean up a little bit, right? I still had my rules into place, but I had to wean up on how much I was dictating to my daughter. And then when she hit her 20s, I really had to ease up a little bit and not hound her as much, and learn how to communicate with her as a young adult versus that little 10-year-old or that 16-year-old who has her new license. So I've learned, I think, through parenting, that we have to also remember to rise up and meet our children where they are in order to have really healthy communication.
I was actually going to mention that, Khalilah, because we've been talking about children, we've been mentioning children, but I think everything we've been talking about relates to teenagers, as you said. You know, how can we improve with the communication with our teenagers? How can we give them more attention? How can we bond? What signs should we be aware of? And you mentioned a very important thing when you brought up the foster children, the children who are not privileged, because we know there's a lot going on right now, right? And I just remember the fact that the number of abuse has also increased a lot. And we have been reading about this, it's on the news, physical abuse, sexual abuse. So I think it's also very important for us to take care and bond and talk to see what's happening so that we can protect our children and our adolescents.
I am for it. Our brand, Auntie B and Friends, was built on giving children a voice. That's what it was. That was the initiative, and giving them the tools to utilize so that they can use their voices under all circumstances. And I want to quickly just say, for parents that are foster parents, or maybe have adopted a child, you know, at maybe they were 8 years old and you've adopted that child at that time, make sure that you're having those conversations around, are you feeling safe? For children that go to, maybe there's some new family members, because now we're home, right? So we're all in the house together. Just be mindful of their interactions with other adults. Maybe they feel uncomfortable. Maybe they don't want to give a hug. Don't force them. Maybe they don't want to give a kiss. Don't force them, because you may not know that, you know, there could be some inappropriate behaviors there, some violations that child may not be conversing about. So let's make sure that we're paying attention to those warning signs. And you're absolutely right, Marina. Marital abuse and spousal abuse have increased. Sexual molestation and abuse has increased within our home environments. So we have to really be mindful of who our children are around. Is this a safe environment? And ask them, do you feel safe? Right? And let's get away from the terminologies that our great grandmothers and grandfathers used to use when we talked about maybe our sexual body parts. You know, my grandmother used to say cookie. And it was like, what? Right? No, right? Like, you know, I don't know about you guys, but that's my culture, right? So let's start using the right words, right? So that our children can have the right language if they're in those circumstances to protect themselves as we're in lockdown and confined spaces. Let's maybe have those conversations as well to check up. Are you being violated? You know, and that's teenagers too. And I just want to say, when I use the word children in my home, in my culture, we call all the kids children. You know, they could be 30, you're still a child to us, right? So it's just in our culture. I do mean children across the board. Let's make sure that we're asking them, are you safe? And even in relationships, if your son or daughter's in a relationship, are you safe in that relationship? Ask those questions. It's okay to ask those questions. And if you have any personal experiences to share with them, feel free. I remember when I had a boyfriend, or I remember when I had and he and she. Be relatable, bring it back to that, because it makes you human now. It's not just mom or dad. It's not that superior position that you hold in your home, the hierarchy. It makes you relatable to your teenager or to your younger child.
Mm-hmm. And I think it's so important that you're talking about, Khalilah, about being relatable, because that's what's going to improve the communication, right? It's not just mommy telling me, do this or do that or whatever. It's, wow, mommy told me about her story, what she went through. That must be really hard for her. So now it makes sense to me why I need to protect myself, why I need to do that. It's not just a rule, but now I understand why she's telling me that. So I'm going to follow through instead of just saying, oh, it's just a rule. I don't understand. I'm not going to do it. Right. So it is very important for us to make ourselves relatable to improve the bonding.
Yeah, absolutely, Nadia. Absolutely. Yeah.
For sure, for sure. I used to do that. I actually do that with my daughters a lot. You know, when they go out, when I talk about, I share my experiences with them. We have a very open communication about everything. And the fact that they know they can talk to me about different topics, I think it's what makes them safe. They know that if they're in trouble, they can call me, they can count on me, they can count on their father, and we will be there to support them. So the more open we are, the more we relate to our children, the more we protect them, actually.
Yeah, and the more they feel like they can come to you, Marina, they can come to you and tell you stuff. You know, my mother used to use this trick on me. She'd say, she'd come to me, she'd call me Layla. So she'd say, Lay, you look like you got something going on. I'd be like, no, I'm fine, I'm fine. She goes, listen, remember, you don't have to lie to me because you're lying to yourself. She always made me accountable for my own emotions because I knew I was lying, right? I just didn't want to tell her, right? But I knew, and she knew because mothers tend to know, right? So she would say, listen, don't lie to me. Don't, you're lying to yourself. So be honest and have those communication. And I think even just someone has a comment, what kind of activities can we recommend to exercise our positive thinking? I think it's really, let's think, hey, what 5 positive things can you say about your sister today? Right? What 5 things can you say about your dad today, or what have you? Maybe that's a stepping stone. Now, Nadia, this is your expertise in this area, so I'll pass it on to you. But it is something that we had to do in our home every Friday, or not Friday, we went bowlings on Friday. Every Saturday, we'd play family night or family meetings we'd have actually. So we'd sit around, and I've got a large family. We sit around and we talk about our week or what was stressing us all about as a family meeting. And my mom used to put something in the jar. So we'd have a little cup or jar, and she'd put a bunch of positive words in there. And she would say, okay, pick something out, Lay. So I'd have to pick out something, and she'd say, what does that word say? And so let's say it was, I don't know, extravagant. I'm just throwing a word out. She'd say, okay, say something using the word extravagant to your sister. So I would have to compliment my sister and use the word extravagant to emphasize something that she's might have done that I noticed during the week. And it could have been something simple like, you did those dishes so extravagantly. You know what I mean? Like it could be funny, but we had a good time doing it. And she was really all about that, my mother. She was really all about that. So I've learned some of this, tools that she's giving me that I apply to my own daughter and my nieces and nephews. But I'll let you go on, Nadia, because I think this is really a good positive topic for you.
Yeah, but that was a great example. Awesome. That's exactly it, right? If we are able to bring ourselves to think about the positive, of course, that's going to affect our level of anxiety or depression, right? Because anxiety and depression is us thinking about how we are bad people or how the world is a terrible place. So if we bring that positivity to our lives, it's going to improve amazingly. So doing games like that is the best way. It's not being forceful, it's not being weird. It's just being, let's have fun with that. Some families have the tendency to, when they're putting their kids to sleep, it's the time where they're gonna say, okay, tell me about your day. what was hard for you, but bring me also 3 things that were good. So 1 negative and 3 positive, because we want to enhance the positive, not just get stuck in the negative, that we tend to be more depressive this way.
Actually, I was gonna bring that up, Nadia, because this is not only for kids. I think this is valid for us as adults as well. You know, for us, because as we said before, we have to keep our anxiety down as well. We have to keep control of ourselves. So every night before we go to sleep, look back in our day and what are the 3 things we're grateful for. Sometimes it doesn't have to do with us. Sometimes just something you saw on the street, someone helping an old lady, right? A story you heard. And I think that's really helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure. As you know, I live in a condo and it was raining earlier today here in Toronto and pouring down cats and dogs for just a brief moment here. And I was out on the balcony and I saw these little kids with their mom and dad and they're just skipping a la 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 in the rain, you know, free. They were just so free. And I chuckled to myself so loud with an inner child connecting to that energy. And that's what made me smile here. And I felt silly by myself to a certain extent, right? I was like, look at you laughing and they don't even know you, you know, but it was great. It made me feel fantastic. And I will have that moment when I rest this evening, Marina, I will have that moment to be like, yeah, I remembered that happy joy. Point out the small things in life, my friends. If you know, the birds that tweet in the morning, that's a place of gratitude.
Yes.
Laughter. That's the fact that you can even utilize your hearing is a place of gratitude, right? So have those moments, reflect in your day's events and look at the things that made you chuckle, you know, and laugh and smile. Maybe it was just the woman, you know, walking by in the neighborhood with her dog and her dog was just, you know, doing his regular dog thing, right? But that might have been that one small moment that can change your perception of how you're dealing with your regular days and moving forward. And breathe and exercise and drink water. Even if you're not a big person that exercise, get up in the morning and stretch. Just stretch, one stretch. Just one little tiny stingy stretch, right? Doesn't have to be too much. Get the blood flowing a little bit.
Yeah.
Totally agree. I think we can open up to questions, although we've been discussing some of the questions that have appeared here, right, on the right side, but I think we could open up to our guests for the question and answer session right now.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if anyone has any questions to ask. You can maybe unmute your microphone or just write on the chat if there's anything you would like to ask our guests.
I do see some comments like Claudia mentioned, timetable was a lifesaver for more and my son during quarantine. Good for you, Claudia. That's fantastic.
Okay, I got a question here because actually I've been receiving the questions on my phone. We have amazing people behind us. So one of the questions is, you mentioned activities. What kind of activities would you recommend them to exercise positive thinking? We've covered that, right? Yep. But there was a question here we sort of covered, but I think maybe we could talk a little more about it. Rachel asked, how about adolescents, teenagers? My daughter doesn't want to do anything, even go out in a park, right? We sort of like covered adolescents, but maybe we could explore it a little more because it's hard. For a child, I think we can just grab them and take them. But for adolescents, it's a little more difficult. So do you have any suggestions?
It is important to make them move, right? If they're too isolated and they're not doing much, if they get stuck doing that for a long period, that is going to make it easier for them to get depressive. And when we're talking about depression, the first thing we want to do is make them active, like behavior activation. So we tend to, I even do with my clients, so we're going to set a routine of things that you need to do. And we can take by baby steps. So the first day you're going to go out and you're just going to take a walk around your block. That's it. The second day, maybe you spend 6 minutes. Third day, 7 minutes, and just go increasing a little bit by little. But I think that when we're talking about teenagers, that they tend to be more rebellious. So we're going to have to figure it out how we can force them to do something, but also give them options, right? Because we don't want to just throw anything that doesn't make sense to them. So first, try to figure it out what they used to enjoy doing before COVID, or even before when they were great. What makes them happy? Do they like going out with friends? Do they like riding a bike? Do they like eating different food? Mm-hmm. Try to figure it out what they enjoy, what are their interests, to make it easier for you to throw some options. And as a parent, maybe you can do one option is an obligation. There's no way for you to go back there. And then two other options where you can choose. Yeah. So the first thing that they need to do is be active. So then you can force them, okay, if you don't want to leave the house, at least you're going to do something in the house. I don't want you to be 24 hours in your bedroom. So at least on the first day, you're going to spend at least 1 hour out of your bedroom. So you can do something that I planned, or you can do something that you want to do, but just be out of your room for 1 hour. The next day, 1 hour and a half, and then increase by that. So there's actually years to make them active.
There's a question here. Oh, sorry, Khalilah. Go ahead.
And I just want to quickly spiral off Nadia, because she said something that was just so exciting to me internally, which was, you know, they like to eat. Listen, everybody has to eat every day, 3 meals a day if we're blessed. If your baby is in the room too long and they're a teenager, hey, what's your favorite meal? Maybe they love lasagna. Do you want to cook and help me make lasagna? Now we can put that extra cheese you like on it tonight, and get them in that kitchen, cooking that lasagna or whatever it is that they enjoy. Like, so that again, and that's life skills. We are now building life skills for our children, and they don't even know it. That's the beauty about being parents, is that we can manipulate the situation, and our babies don't even know that they're learning, you know. So consider some of those quick moments, the baking and the life skills, and, you know, maybe working on some, building something, because some children really enjoy building, and we're working on that. So there's some really great ways to incorporate that physical activity, that movement, spiraling off from Nadia as well. Yeah.
Yeah. And again, not only children, adolescents as well. My daughter, my daughter, she started cooking, and I loved it. She started getting into healthy foods, so she started looking for recipes, and it suddenly the whole house was on a diet, basically, because she was the one cooking. But and it's also very nice, as you said, it's a very nice activity. And if you're there with your kid, with your adolescent, you're also bonding, you're strengthening. And there's a question here, like exactly about this. What different activities would you suggest to kids, and also, of course, to adolescents, other than video games? So we mentioned, you've mentioned lots of activities we can do with kids, right? We've mentioned baking would be one, cooking. Is there any other activity that maybe we as parents can do with our kids and adolescents?
Yeah, in adolescence. And again, I just want to reiterate, whenever I say children, I don't necessarily mean the younger ones. It's a cultural thing for me. But Auntie B and Friends has a Pinterest page, and we have all kinds of arts and crafts that you can tap into for children of all different ages. So preschooler, toddlers, young adults, and teenagers. And some of them are really mind-challenging games that they have to kind of work through. Others are really, well, simplified in the sense of an adult's perspective for our younger preschoolers. Think about some of those activities if you kind of want to just browse, and maybe from there we'll spiral some other components of inspiration. Again, that's Pinterest, Auntie B and Friends, and it may spiral off some really cool things. My niece, do you guys remember the game where you would do the fortune teller game? Like, you'd have this thing on your hands, right? We can bring back some of those old games, right? You know, what number do you want? 1, 2, 3, you know, the fortune teller games. Maybe it's some of the old school games that we played as children that we kind of bring back to our children and say, I remember when we did this, let's make it, you know? So those are some of the creative ideas I can suggest.
Yeah. And I just wanted to add to that, because it is so important that when we are doing, or when we are planning any activities to do with our kids, that we think about things that we are also interested, right? We don't want to just do it because, oh, okay, someone told me to do this, I'm going to do it, but I didn't get it, or it doesn't make sense to me. Then your kid or your teenager is going to notice that you're not having fun, you're not really there, you're not enjoying, and it's going to be an awful experience. So try to figure out something that you also are going to enjoy. You're also going to have fun doing it. When we have kids, it's our time to buy the toys that we wish we had when we were kids. It's our time to re-experience childhood. So just throw yourself at that. Just go play whatever you used to play when you were a kid. Just put the kid mask, say, okay, now I'm a child. What do I want to do? Do I want to go around in the rain? Do I want to do something silly? And enjoy doing it, because it's important that the kid to see that you're having fun, that you're there with your whole body and mind, that you're really enjoying. That is the most important thing.
And it's important because it has to be a real connection, right? We're talking about connecting, we're talking about relating, so it has to be a real thing. They have to feel we're having fun. There is another question here. It says, how can you filter the grown-up communication with your children? Sometimes you are in moments of stress and anger that you tend to forget to filter. How can we improve that?
You know what? Great question, Carolyn. Yeah. And I feel like sometimes we can't. We're not perfect. Keep in mind, moms and dads that are listening, we are not perfect in our jobs of being parents. We're not. And when the filter isn't there, and we just had a moment, what is honorable coming from that moment? Meaning we had a moment and we lost our cool, let's say, right? What's honorable about that is what we do after. So we can say, oh, sorry about that. And maybe we don't think about that right there in that moment. Maybe it's a cool down moment. Maybe we've just exploded and now our child or our teenager's in their room and we're off in our rooms. It's honorable when we come back and we own ourselves. And we say, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have spoken that way. I lost my cool. My bad. Okay, let's revisit. Are you ready to talk now? Do you want to have this moment? You know, when I have a one-on-one with my daughter and she's having a really heavy moment, and she's 23, so you can imagine, right? We've had some heat. Okay, we had some low heat.
I can imagine.
Right? Yeah. So in those moments of that where we're heated with one another, I've had to come back. And I've had to say, okay, sorry, Lee. I apologize. I got outside myself. Are you ready to talk? You know, and then we'll give each other our shared stories, and we'll practice that whole body listening moment in that moment. I'll try to sit quietly and listen to her side of the argument or what she was trying to express to me, and vice versa. But parents, just be honorable and own yourselves. That's it. That's it.
Yeah.
What would you say, Nadia?
Nothing at all. You said it all. Beautifully. That's it. Yeah, I think it's so important for them to have this model of us being able to recognize, oh, I exploded, and it's okay because it happens. We're not perfect. We don't want to be perfect. Well, just going there and say, I'm sorry. And that's just giving them the role model of, okay, it's okay when I explode. I don't have to beat myself up because I did it. It's human, and it's okay to do that. I just have to go back there and say, I'm sorry.
Yeah. And for like, you know, when my daughter was really in her transition, becoming a young woman and really I remember we got into a huge argument and we never spoke all night. So in our rooms, share a wall, right? So I know she's in her room tense. I was in my room tense. We went to sleep tense, which was very uncomfortable, but we did. She went to work the next day. I went to work. And it wasn't until we came home later on in the evening, I had cooked dinner and we came home and she had her nightly routine and then we had a moment. So know that those moments don't have to happen quick like that, moms and dads. You know, but when they do have to happen, you have to be calm in your space. You have to be open to receive what your children or what your young adult is saying to you, whoever, your child, what they're saying to you. So you do have to be calm in your space to receive open communication and to learn, because there's a learning. I learn from her all the time. And in turn, I know she's learning from me too. So Don't rush it. Just be in the moment, feel your energy, feel the vibes amongst your family, and then come back.
Yeah.
Perfect.
And
There's
maybe
another.
also, yes, sorry. I just wanted to also, if you're noticing that you're stressed all the time and that you're losing your temper most of the day, then it's also maybe a sign that you're not well. And there's something going on. You're too stressed. There's a high level of anxiety or whatever is going on, but something is going on. So you should also take time to take care of yourself. If you need to call a friend, if you need to ask help for your family, or if you notice, okay, nobody else can help me, so now I need professional help, go for it, because it's also a sign that something is not right. It's okay for us to lose our temper from day to day, but if you're doing it every single day, 5 to 10 times a day, it's a sign that you're not well. Something is going on, right? You need to seek some help.
And don't be embarrassed by that.
Yeah, no.
Do not be embarrassed by not having control all the time.
Yeah.
If you need help, go get it. You're going to make yourself better and your family better, you know, and it's that place of liberation when our children see us ask for help and they're witnessing us go and seek that help. It's that role model role that we're in at this point in time.
Yeah.
Don't be embarrassed. Go get that help. Call Nadia.
You guys are excellent. Okay, there's another question here. After you agree with your kids to change their routine, everything we talked about, right? Let's change the routine. Let's have some timetable. And after the first days of the change, they don't change. This is not happening. What should we do?
I don't think.
Do you understand the question?
No, I didn't.
So I can repeat.
Thanks.
Right in the beginning, it's okay. Right in the beginning, we mentioned, Khalilah mentioned a very important thing about the routine, right? How we have to change the routine for the family. Yep. And maybe have those time schedules. Now it's time to play. Now it's time to walk the dog. Now it's time with mommy. And after we do that, and we start trying this routine, from what I understand from the question is, after a couple of days, this is not working. You know, what can we do? There are no changes happening here. So what should we do as parents to change this routine with our kids?
Yeah. And that is something that when I'm trying to teach that to clients, they tend to be stuck on that because they try once a week and they say, no, it's not working, or it's too hard, and then tend to just give up. And when you're trying to set a new routine, it's not going to be easy, not at all. Don't expect for you to the next day say, oh, it's amazing, it works and it's perfect. No, it's not going to be. It's going to take you time to rearrange and to make some change into that routine until you find the good spot that you say, okay, now it's working. But it's going to take a long time, because even us as adults, when it's a new routine, we tend to be a little bit rebellious and say, I don't want to do it. I'm in my comfort zone. I don't want to change. I don't want to do it. So it's going to take us time to allow ourselves to first experiment. So, okay, let me at least try and see how it goes, right? So if you tried for 1 week, 2 weeks, or 2 months, and it's still not feeding you well, maybe you look for some help, for professional help to give you some guidance, or just talk with other families. Hey, I'm trying to do this. Have you ever tried to do that? Did it work? Didn't work? Try to talk with friends that are going through the same experience to have some talks about it and try to figure it out. What other things can you do? But when we're talking about routine, I always tell the family to do it together. It's not going to be the parents that are going to say, okay, from now on, we're going to do this, and this. No, we need to have the entire family together. Of course, if they're young kids above 5, they're not going to know a lot, but even though you have to ask them, what do you like to do, right? This is your free time. What would you enjoy doing, right? But everybody needs to do the routine together, because everybody needs to tell, okay, I prefer to take a bath in the morning and not at night, so I'm gonna have to move this. We don't need to be so strict. And if everybody can be part of it and think together, it's gonna improve the bonding of the family. So just take time.
Yeah, I agree, Nadia. 110. You know, driving a standard is not easy. You know, it's not 2 pedals anymore, it's 3. And there's a gear shift. You got to move that bad boy from 1 to 5, right? Take your time. You're gonna stall. You're gonna have those moments. Feel your way through this experience. Feel it. And if it's not working and the children are having conflict or the young adults are having conflict, ask them, what would you like to change that's different? Give them that voice. Let them use their voices. Ask your husband, honey, how does this work out? Or your wife. You know, work together as a team. Family units are teams, not one individual running the shot. You know, especially when you get adolescents in the game. Even when you have a little stink, a brand new baby on board. Listen, you think you're running the show? No, that little brand new he's only 2 days old, is dictating when you're going to be waking up. So, you know, families are units. They work together. There's a flow. You have to have a team. And so let's focus on the team and let's see how each player plays a role and what their positions are, you know, in that team, right?
Yeah.
I think you should mention something fantastic, which is exactly giving voice to the others, right? Sometimes we plan and this is meaningful to us and not meaningful to the other. And as a team, that's how things work. We have to see what's meaningful for everybody. So this is really a very great contribution, Khalilah and Nadia. Well, I would like to know if anybody else has any other questions to ask them. I guess, I don't know. Is there anything else you two would like to say, Nadia and Khalilah?
I will just quickly say that for parents with children in the preschool age group, I see that Fred's put the Pinterest link for Auntie Bee and Friends, and I just now put the YouTube link for Auntie Bee and Friends. And the reason why I'm sharing this is because, especially the YouTube link, there's a series called Chatter That Matters that Auntie Bee and Friends does, and it's a whole body listening I guess, series or episode where the puppets in Auntie Bee are talking about how whole body listening is and what that is and how to utilize that. So that's something that I'll share there with you all for the younger children. And I just want to remind everybody to please, please, please do not stress yourselves out with being perfect in this COVID at home. Don't do it. Do not put yourselves through a space where you're using your ego. Remember, when you get into that negative headspace, that is what we call ego. Ego is the only thing that we have in our brains that can manipulate our thought process. And when you get that in that little whisper that's trying to hold you back, take that moment and say, oh, that's my ego. I am worthy. And why will I say that? I will say, because do you really think that anybody that truly loves you is going to point their finger at you, constantly criticizing you, constantly putting you down, constantly making you feel inferior? No, you've got best friends in your life because they help you rise. They keep it real with you, but they help you rise. Remember that the ego is there that creates that negative component. And you want to correct that. You want to recognize that space for yourself. So when you hear that whisper, I'm not a good parent, or you hear that whisper in there that's holding you back, be mindful of that whisper, catch that whisper and say, I love myself. And I'm going to continue to love myself. And I love myself right now in this moment because I recognize that I love myself. So keep that there. Keep that there for yourselves.
Yeah. Perfect. Beautiful.
You two are simply amazing. That's all I have to say. And on behalf of PsyMood, I really would like to thank you both for being here with us today, for hosting this amazing session. I enjoyed it a lot. I'm sure everybody who was here watching you also did. And my heart is filled with gratitude. And I'm sure when I say this, I'm speaking on behalf of Fred and on behalf of Rodrigo too, and the whole PsyMood team. thank you so much for being here again with us.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much for having us.
Yes,
And
thank you for having us. It was amazing. I really enjoyed it too.
Yeah.
you too. Take good care, everyone. Thanks, everyone, for being here. And see you in our next PsyMood session. And check out Khalilah's link. It's amazing. I'm myself going to check the YouTube. Nadia, afterwards, you could also maybe put here the link for Força Materna, which Nadia does an amazing job too with mothers, supporting mothers. So it would be nice.
Yeah, her link is there. So make sure you grab that link for Nadia, and her Instagram is there as well.
Okay, good. Thanks, everyone, again.
Thank you, guys.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Bye.